Harper Audio presents Crazies to the left of me, Wimps to the right. How one side lost its mind and the other lost its nerve. Written and read by Bernard Goldberg. Copyright 2007 by Medium Cool Communications. Production copyright 2007, HarperCollins Publishers. Crazies to the left of me. When I was growing up in the Bronx in the 1950s, I didn't know about liberals or conservatives. But I did know about the New York Yankees. The Yanks were my life back then. Sometimes when they'd lose, which was almost never, I would stop eating. When I was 10 years old, I was the Mahatma Gandhi of the Bronx. Gandhi fasted for long stretches in order to change an oppressive social order. I fasted for maybe a day, until Mickey or Yogi or one of the other Bronx bombers knocked one out of the park and the Yankees won again. In both cases, going without food highlighted a terrible injustice, and in the end, our sacrifice made the world a better place. Back then, the Yankees' many critics, most of them sore losers from Brooklyn, would say that rooting for the Yanks was like rooting for General Motors. As a kid, I didn't quite grasp the meaning, but I did know it wasn't good. General Motors was big business, the embodiment of corporate power. GM was, forgive my language, Republican. Which meant the tycoons who ran General Motors went to snooty country clubs and ate expensive meals at fancy restaurants. We hung out on the roof of the tenement, a place we called Tar Beach, and ate at diners, that is, on those rare occasions when we ate out at all. Republicans didn't represent us. We were Democrats, and I can honestly say that during my entire childhood in the Bronx, I never met even one Republican there. Not one. Frankly, I don't think they existed. The Democrats were for the working man, just like my father, who got up before dawn every day and headed off to a factory where he ran big, clanking machines that put embroidery on dresses and tablecloths and just about anything else. He worked hard, and although he never made a lot of money, he always took care of his family. He and all the others like him were the blue-collar backbone of the Democratic Party. None of the men I knew growing up had white-collar jobs. They all worked in factories like my father did, or in little dry goods stores selling hats and coats, or in garages fixing cars. The women stayed home and took care of the kids. None of them had jobs outside the house. That would have reflected badly on their husbands, an indication that the man of the house couldn't provide for his own family. None of the grown-ups had gone to college. Most of them hadn't even finished high school, which wasn't the least bit unusual in those days. Their savior was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who got them through the dark days of the Depression. FDR, because of his polio, could hardly move without a wheelchair. But to the faithful where I grew up, he could walk on water. So it's not exactly a mystery why years later, when my interest extended beyond Yankee Stadium, I took the road my parents had traveled and became a Democrat. I didn't even have to think about it. It's just who I was. Up north, we were all liberal Democrats, of course, but on the news we heard about the other kind of Democrat who lived in the South, the conservative kind. But in those days, no decent person, certainly not after the civil rights movement began, would get caught so much as washing his hands in the same sink as a conservative. They were not like us. They were bigots and cowards who had to hide behind a flimsy excuse they called states' rights and the muscle of nasty sheriffs to hang on to a way of life that struck many of us as not worth hanging on to. I despised conservatives back then. In the early 60s, when I was still in high school, we took our first long family road trip south to visit relatives in faraway exotic Florida. We traveled in my dad's prized possession, a two-tone, black and white, 1954 Plymouth, which he would polish with an old rag every chance he got. Someplace in the South, Virginia or one of the Carolinas maybe, we pulled into an old wooden roadside restaurant for lunch. This was still the old South.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?